Hello and welcome to the next in my series of Esperanto videos. I'm going to call this 201 since we've finished the material covered in the basic 16 rules. Big numbers. If you recall from my numbers video, I mentioned that numbers of 1,000,000 and higher were kind of weird. Well, let's get into that. Here's the basic 10 numbers to remind you of them. Unu, du, tri, kvar, kvin, ses, sep, ok, now, dec. And then there's 100, 1,000, and 1,000,000. Cent, mil, and unu miliono. A million has an O at the end of it because it's treated like a noun. Unfortunately, that means it inflects. Suppose I want to say I have 5,000 friends on Facebook. I would say, mi havas kvin mil amikojn je Facebook. The friends are what I have, so they're the direct object of the sentence. So it's marked as plural and accusative. Kvin mil is just a number, and numbers don't inflect, so there's no J's or N's on them. But if I want to say I have 5,000,000 friends on Facebook, from million on up, they're treated like nouns. So I have to say, mi havas kvin milionojn, 5 millions. It's plural, and it's marked for the accusative. Now, what do I have 5,000,000 of? This is where we use that preposition da. Remember da, you would use it with like glass of wine, glasso da vino, cup of water, tasso da aquo. It's describing what the thing itself is composed of. So what I have is 5 millions. It's the millions that take the direct object marker, not the friends. The friends are what the millions are made of. So I have 5 millions. 5 millions of friends on Facebook. Mi havas kvin milionojn da amikoj. Amikoj is plural, but it is not the direct object of the sentence, and therefore it doesn't receive the N. Miliono receives the N. So if I have 2 million, I have du milionoj, because I have more than 1 million, and a million is treated like a noun. If I have 123 million, I have cent dudek tri milionoj. But what if I have 1,000,000,000 or more? We need to take a detour for a moment and talk about something that you may not be aware of if you don't know European languages. The European scale of numbers is different from the one used in America and some other countries. We advance billion to trillion to quadrillion by the thousands. There's another scale of numbers, which is called the long scale or the European scale, in which these numbers advance by the millions. 1,000 of something is just that, 1,000 of it. It's when you get to the million that it advances. So 1,000 million in the long scale is just that, 1,000 million. Although in some countries there is a word milliard. When you get to 1,000,000 million, that's when you call it a billion. But in the American scale of numbers, the short scale, we've already gone ahead and called that a trillion. What we call a quadrillion in the United States is 1,000 billion, or a billiard. 1,000 of those in the long scale is a trillion, but in the short scale, it's a quintillion, and so on. This means that as the numbers get higher and higher, their meanings diverge more and more. In the short scale, a decillion is 10 to the 33rd, but in the long scale, it's 10 to the 60th. A vigintillion in the short scale is 10 to the 63rd, but in the European scale, it's 10 to the 120th. Let's take a quick glance at some of the countries and languages that use the different scales. The long scale is used by France and French-speaking countries. It's also used by Spain and Spanish-speaking countries, by Germany and German-speaking countries, and by the Western Slavic countries of Europe, such as the Czech Republic or Slovenia. The short scale, on the other hand, is used by the UK for the most part, the United States, and most of the English-speaking world. It's used by most of the Arabic-speaking world. It's used by Armenia. It's used by the Eastern Slavic countries, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine. There's exceptions all over the place. For example, Portugal uses the long scale, while Brazil, which speaks Brazilian Portuguese, uses the short scale. And then there's some countries which actually use both. South Africa uses the long scale when speaking Afrikaans, but uses the short scale when speaking English. As a side note, that word milliard for what we call a billion in the United States is used in some parts of the short scale speaking world. So you might see someone saying million, then milliard, then trillion. Now, Esperanto has words to translate all of these words. You can say biliono or miliardo, you can say triiliono, you can say quadriliono or biliardo, and so on. So if you're just literally translating what someone says, you can have the Esperanto version of what they said. But that's going to vary depending on the original source. This is kind of confusing. Surely Esperanto would like to make this regular. It does. But unfortunately for Americans, it uses the long scale. So 10 to the power of 9 in Esperanto is properly a miliardo. You could say milionoi, but it's a miliardo. 10 to the 12th, where the long scale countries call it a billion, Esperanto says, now wait a minute. For our own proper Esperanto number, we're not using this bi stuff. That's a prefix that comes from Latin. The Esperanto word for two is du, so it's duiliono. 10 to the 15th, a billiard, is a duiliardo. 10 to the 18th, a long scale trillion, is triiliono. Note there are two I's next to each other, they're in separate syllables. Tri is the number 3, and iliono is the suffix. A trilliard is a triiliardo, a quadrillion on the long scale is a quadriliono, and so on. Don't be confused. In Esperanto you can say triiliono, which is just a translation of trillion, whether it means 10 to the 12th or 10 to the 18th. But you should say triiliono, which is 10 to the 18th, guaranteed. There's triiliardo, which means trilliard, which is always 10 to the 21st. But the proper way to say it in Esperanto has two I's, triiliardo. A quadrillion in Esperanto, a quadriliono, could be 10 to the 15th or 10 to the 24th. But it's properly quadriliono, which is 10 to the 24th. And so on. Now, if you use scientific prefixes, the Système International prefixes, don't panic. Those have been agreed internationally, and Esperanto preserves them. All you have to do is change the spelling. So the prefix exa, which is 10 to the power of 18, and in English is spelled exa, in Esperanto is spelled eksa. But you don't have to worry about whether it's 10 to the 18th or some other number, because the prefixes all use the short scale. Now, someone asked me about the colloquial use in English of tens or teens of hundreds. Here's what I mean by that. The Prince song, 1999, is pronounced 1999. It even says so in the lyrics. That's not correct usage for that number. It's 1999, but we accept it colloquially in English. I tell people I was born in 1973. Again, it's colloquial. Technically, if I want to be really fussy, I would say I was born in the year 1973. And if I really wanted to be picky about it, I would say of the Lord, but I don't do that. The Esperanto translations of these, pretty literally, are not correct. Maljuste. La canto de princo dec now dec now. 1999. That's not correct. Mi nascigis je dec now sepdec tri. Born in 1973. Maljuste. Not correct. For usage like this, you would really need to say mil now dec now. 1999. I was born in 1973. Those are the correct ways to say it. Now in English, if there's 5,300 of something, you might say 5,300 of it. Well, that's 5 syllables long. That's a syllable shorter than 5,300. In Esperanto, it's not correct to do that. You would be saying kvindek tri cent, 5,300. Not correct. 4 syllables. But to say it correctly in Esperanto, kvin mil tri cent is correct and still only uses 4 syllables. So it's not even shorter to do it wrong in Esperanto. All right, let's cap off. How much water is there on Earth? Well, I Googled quickly and found an article at howstuffworks.com that said that there's 1.26 times 10 to the 21st liters of water on Earth. Let's put this in Esperanto. Everybody take a deep breath. 10 to the 18th is a triiliono, and 10 to the 21st is a triiliardo. Okay, here we go. La terra havas, the Earth has, unu triiliardon. Remember, the triiliard is what we have, so it gets the accusative N ending. Kai ducent sesdek triilionoin. I have 1 trilliard and 260 trillions. Da litroi, of liters. Da aquo, of water. I have to use da twice. I have large numbers made up of liters, and the liters in turn are made up of water. La terra havas unu triiliardon kai ducent sesdek triilionoin da litroi da aquo. And now you know how to say really big numbers in Esperanto. Dankon pro la spektado.